Hello, and welcome to another installment of Prepared Foods Solutions TV. My name is Doug Peckinpah, Director of Content Strategy at BNP Media and leader of the Prepared Foods editorial team. Today, I'm excited to welcome Rebecca Furbeck, Ph.D., a Technical Service Manager for Proteins at Kemin Food Technologies North America, as we discuss strategies for formulating safe, clean label meat and poultry products. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hello, Doug. It's always a great day to talk about food. From production systems to the small microbes that inhabit them, there's always so much to uncover. Thanks for having me.
That's great. Kemin Food Technologies provides market knowledge, innovation, and technical expertise to leverage consumer trends into high-performing, value-added ingredients that can provide a product's quality and texture improvements, as well as extend shelf life and inhibit microbial growth, delaying lipid oxidation in a variety of food applications. And Rebecca supports customers with ingredient performance, product development, and process troubleshooting. She has a wealth of experience to share at the intersection of meat science and food microbiology. You can see how enthusiastic she is about food microbiology and processing technologies. And she can help us understand the difficulties the protein industry is facing related to developing test protocols and assessing how to best address these challenges. As we mentioned, our focus for this installment of Solutions TV is formulating safe, clean label meat and poultry products. And safety is key to every formulation. Food and beverage brands can do so much to help instill consumer confidence in the safety of their products, and assurance of food safety is just instrumental to strong brand building. And the first step for product developers is often identifying the best ingredients to provide food safety for the given application. Rebecca, what are some of the strategic ways that formulators can improve the safety of processed meat and poultry products through ingredient selection?
Yeah, so when we think about strategically building a formula or a process with food safety concerns in mind, we kind of have to consider the risks that that product is going to face over its shelf life, and what might be the best places or tools to manage those risks. In our human lives, we do this on a day-to-day basis, right? So we have lots of different ways we can go to work, go to the grocery store, go all these places, but the risks involved in that process might be different. And so we have different ways to manage that risk, right? So you might go to the store in your car, and there's a risk associated with that. You know, motor vehicle accidents can happen, but we have things in our cars. We've got airbags, we've got seat belts, you know, things that can help manage those risks if they were to happen, right? On the other hand, maybe you take a motorcycle to wherever you're going, right? And that's a different set of risks. You know, you don't have the protection of the vehicle per se. And so in that situation, you might need more protective equipment, right? You might need a helmet would be a good tool, you know, protective clothing. Maybe you're driving at a different speed limit. There's ways to mitigate that risk that might vary on the situation. And that's true for food systems as well. And so when we think about meats, we have to think about what is going to happen through the shelf life of that product, and what am I reasonably likely to occur in that system that I have to control. In certain food systems, we know that Salmonella and E. coli can naturally occur on meats. But the good news there is that we can thermally inactivate them. So for most cases, we can use a thermal process. The USDA has a table called Appendix A. As long as we cook meats to the temperatures and times listed in that table, we know those risks are managed. Other bacteria like Clostridium species grow actually after the cooking of the product. But the nice thing with them is we can manage them through cooling processes, is one way. So as long as we cool that product down fast enough, the Clostridia can't sporulate. But sometimes a product might have, you know, a very large diameter. Like if we think about a ham, it might take a long time to cool that product. And so an ingredient like nitrite does an excellent job at inhibiting the sporulation of those Clostridia. So in that case, the process control and an ingredient could be useful. And a major bacteria that we worry about, particularly in cold deli meats, sliced meats, things that we say have post-process things. So after thermal processing, they have an operation that occurs outside of that cook oven or that cook cycle. We worry about a bacteria called Listeria. And we worry about listeria because its natural habitat is the cold. And so if you think about a cold room where you're slicing the meat, listeria could be in that room. It could also be in your refrigerator at home. And so there's multiple points in the life of that product where it could encounter listeria. And we need to manage that risk. So a great way to inhibit listeria, fortunately, is an ingredient like an organic acid. So you'll see historically we've used things like lactates, but products like vinegar or cultured sugars can control listeria quite well. So regardless of what the hazard is, we have to figure out what is the right tool for that job, whether that be an ingredient or process to mitigate that food safety risk.
When we're in the, talking about meat and poultry, and particularly when formulating processed meat and poultry products, the further processed products that we're talking about, synthetic oxidants and antimicrobials are often designed to provide improved quality and safety products throughout the intended shelf life. But Kemin's recently conducted a survey that shows that 81% of shoppers say it's important to purchase clean label products. So yeah, I know that some of the different thermal processes and things like that, and good handling can all factor into developing a safe, clean product. But what options do formulators have to deliver on key food safety necessities from an ingredient perspective while still enabling clean label appeal?
Right. So, yeah, classically, we might use things like a lactate for an antimicrobial or a BHA, BHT. Those have been often a topic of discussion here recently. So, when we're looking to maybe pivot from those types of solutions, we have to go back to, okay, is this a car? Is this a motorcycle? What actually is the best tool? Do I need the helmet? Do I need the protective padding? What is actually going on in this process that's going to be the right tool? Um, and by understanding the mechanism behind what that ingredient is doing, we might be able to find a natural alternative that kind of has that same function. What's really nice is lots of things in the natural world can have these same chemical mechanisms of the conventional products. So, one thing that's really great for us is bacteria have figured out how to inhibit other bacteria really well. If you think about it, they all live on the food, they're competing for resources. And so one bacterial cell might find a way to inhibit the other ones, inhibit their enemy bacteria, suppress their growth so that they can kind of have the full buffet of that food product for themselves, right? One way bacteria do that, there's a subset of bacteria called lactic acid bacteria, as well as acetic acid bacteria. They naturally make organic acid, and that suppresses listeria really quite well. So what we can do is we can utilize those bacterially produced organic acids through a natural fermentation, like a cultured sugar product, or even just vinegar itself. Those are two great options when it comes to antimicrobials. As far as antioxidants go, it's really quite interesting the way we've derived many of our natural antioxidants. So plants have many, many molecules that they make for a variety of functions. If you think about it, they need to be able to capture minerals from the soil. They need to be able to fight pests, insects, right? And they have to be able to deal with a massive amount of stress from oxidation. Plants, they use energy from the sun to make sugar, to make oxygen in their metabolism, but because they use light energy, they can be pre-exposed to a phenomenon called photooxidation. And so they kind of need a protective system to deal with that photooxidation. Well, fortunately for us, photooxidation and a lot of the oxidative processes that happen in food systems, we can utilize those molecules to suppress oxidation. And so there's lots of different molecules from plants. So rosemary extracts, olive leaves, acerola cherries, all of these plants have molecules that we can use to help delay that oxidation. And in a variety of different, mechanisms. So that acerola can bind metals really quite well. So if you think about a red meat that we love that it's got the iron and the nutrients that we like for human nutrition. Well, those also can be pro-oxidants, right? So that cherry can help stabilize those metals in that meat, so we get to enjoy them before oxidation occurs to them. And then the rosemaries, green tea powders, lots of things like that can quench oxidation reactions as they're occurring in that matrix, allowing us to prevent off odors and flavors as well. So lots of options from the plant world in the antioxidant space.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see what the natural world has to provide in terms of protecting our food systems. Some of these ingredients, obviously naturally derived, might have a characteristic flavor or something that comes through, or it might not. Is that something that can be fine tuned, or what's the flavor contribution of some of these
Yeah.
ingredients?
So any of these ingredients, we have use rates that we suggest to minimize flavor impact, as well as we'll often, you can blend these, right? And so maybe you're rate limited on rosemary. We see this particularly in poultry applications. Poultry is a little bit more bland of a substrate. We'll get maxed out on the rosemary and be at that flavor threshold. But then you can use the olive leaf extract, additionally, and kind of have a blended system so that your flavor impact is reduced while still providing that antioxidant functionality.
Yeah, that's great. When we're looking at the total cost of formulation, cost control is essential in today's market. Food prices continue to go up in the wake of supply chain increases. Inflation rates have increased over the past year, hitting the highest rate this last March since May 2024. So things are getting tighter. In the meat industry, beef prices are at multi-decade highs. How can developers of meat and poultry products get the most out of their formulations to help improve the bottom line?
Yeah. So when working on meat formulations, there's kind of multiple points where we think about cost, right? There's, of course, the cost of the raw materials going in, but then there's also the cost of what does this look like from a yield standpoint at the end of process? How much product am I actually getting and retaining through that process as well that goes out to be sold at the end of the day? And particularly in muscle foods and meats, we have to consider water, right? If you think about muscle tissue, it's about 70% water. And with beef prices so high, that's some pretty expensive water inside that muscle, right? And so we have to think about, okay, if I'm paying the beef price for that water, how am I making sure that I'm retaining that water that I've bought in the form of muscle through that process? And in some cases, you could perhaps extend with water or broth or stocks as well to kind of give additional water in that formula. But regardless of whether that water was already there from the meat itself or is added through a stock or broth, we have to make sure that that system is functional enough to keep it through our thermal cycle, right? And so that's done both through process and ingredient. And so on thermal processes, we like to have kind of gentle step ups. So by doing that, the muscle tissue and those myofibrillar proteins that set kind of the skeleton of our meat system, those can denature more slowly and kind of in an ordered way that structure is more functional. So gentle step ups through cook cycles is one thing that can really help. But then there's a ton we can do on the ingredient side to make sure that that myofibrillar skeleton is as functional and the most muscly muscle it could be, for lack of a better term, right? The really simple traditional way of doing this is using salt. So salt can kind of help pull those myofibrillar proteins into suspension so that they have more just physical likelihood of interacting with other components in that system so that the water and meat can be held in better. However, we also have to balance that with the need for reduced sodium formulas as well. So sometimes salt is not always a tool that we can use to, our maximum potential. In those cases, we have a variety of ingredients that we can use. One thing that we have at Kemin to help with costing, both from the raw material side and at times the cooked process side, is called Proteus. So what this is essentially a meat It's really kind of like meat. We take meat, we have a patented process that makes it more functional. It comes in as a powder, it is rehydrated and pH adjusted, and then used in the formula in replacement of meat. And so on a formula that's, 100 pounds, turkey, chicken, pork, beef, we have all those options. It's 100 pounds meat. We could take out some of that expensive meat and replace it with this produce ingredient at reduced cost. And then it functions as meat in that formula, which is really great to see. The other thing is because of that process, sometimes those myofibrils can have kind of enhanced activity, if you will. They're kind of like super structural superpower agents in the formula. And so as long as you have them mixed in, aggregated with the muscle tissue, they can bind in that system really quite well. And we see yields that are either comparable or improved to the traditional formula. So not only are you reducing cost from the raw side, but as long as you maintain, the same yield through, which we do, you have that raw side retention cost reduction, but you may also see increased yields, which means more product out the door on the other end. What's nice about Proteus is it labels as meat, right? And so because it is meat, there's no really label change. There are other natural tools that you can use, such as starches, hydrocolloids, soy protein concentrates, things like that. With those, you do have, labeling that has to be imparted and sometimes allergen concerns, right? And so it's been really neat working with Proteus that it's a great muscle-derived tool for our muscle systems to help with formulating.
It's really, really fascinating stuff, Rebecca. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It was great to talk.